Hello guys, welcome to session 4 of Wi-Fi pen testing bootcamp. Just so that I know you guys can hear me clearly, please drop a hi or hello or something in the live instructor interaction channel. Okay, yeah. So it looks like everyone is able to hear me. Okay, great. So we can start with today's topic then. So first of all, let's discuss about the common mistake that most people make when they are trying to do Wi-Fi sniffing on the real world setups. Even in the lab, I have gotten queries, not from this batch, from the previous batches, and they were making this kind of mistakes. And then they were saying that, okay, my sniffing is not working, my monitor mode interface is not working, and all of that. So let's go over these mistakes. First of all, whenever you are dealing with an interface, if you are able to see it in your IW dev listing, even after that, you have to make sure that the interface is up. And you can do that by using ifconfig, the name of the interface, and up. Sometimes this is the one that is causing most of the problems. So just make sure that it is up. You are able to see the channel. You are able to see the transmit power. So that was the first one. Second one is to make sure that your interface is in correct mode. It can only be one of the multiple modes that it actually supports. If you want to perform sniffing, if you want to run aerodump, monitor mode is the one that you are looking at. Similarly, if you want to connect to some other network and you want to behave like a client, in that case, it need to be in the managed mode. Similarly, if you are trying to create your own honeypot, if you are trying to create your own evil twin, in that case, it needs to be in the AP mode. So as soon as you will run hosted PD, it will automatically be shifted into the AP mode. And whenever you are in a specific mode, you cannot perform the things of other mode, right? So only one mode will work at one time. Another mistake most people make when they are sniffing for the traffic, especially in the labs, so they just assume that, okay, there is only one band that is 2.4 gigahertz. Either they make this mistake or they make this mistake that whenever we are going to run aerodump ng, it is going to cover both of the bands, which is not true. By default, when you just use aerodump -ng, the name of the interface, it is only going to scan your 2.4 gigahertz channel. It is not going to cover the 11A or the 5 gigahertz channel. So to do that, you have to specify that it needs to scan on both A and BG channel, right? So we have already discussed the command for this in the session 1. You can refer to the slides. But this is some mistake that a lot of people make. They will try to find the Wi-Fi access point, and it won't be visible to them, and they will not think that it can also be on 11A. Similarly, when you will be doing your sniffing, right, especially when you are trying to do the data sniffing for a specific access point and a client pair, in that case, please make sure that you are taking care of the channel bonding. Because if you are not doing that, then you are not seeing the data packets. And when you are not seeing the data packets, it will be a problem. So management frames will be visible to you, and then you will think that, okay, I'm able to perform the sniffing properly. But if you are not seeing the data frame, it is very unusual that a client is connected to an access point and he is not transmitting any data, right? Even when sometimes they are not exchanging some meaningful data, they are still sending data, null data frames. So you should see some data frames if a real access point is connected to a real client. So till now, we have learned about Wi-Fi recon. That is in session 1. We talked about the basics of Wi-Fi. We talked about the sniffing basics. What are the protocols? What are the channels? All of that. After that, we covered the private network, the secured private network, the web, WPA, PSK, WPA2, PSK. Uh, we learned how they work, how to attack them, right? What are the problems? How you can secure them by setting the good passwords, right? Passphrases. In web's case, we know that there is no way to defend it, so simply don't use it. Then in the third session, we talked about the attacks on your WPA enterprise. We talked about different authentication methods and the encapsulation tunnels that are provided by your PEEP, TTLS, right? We also talked a little about TLS and what are the issues when we want to use EAP TLS. Then we also tried some attacks, right? And our main focus till now was to gain access to the network on Wi-Fi layer, right? When you get the passphrase for WPA PSK, when you get key for WEP, or when you get credential pair for the WPA enterprise network, it allows you to connect to that network, right? And that obviously is a connectivity on layer of Wi-Fi, right? It is not your IP layer connectivity. If we are referring to your OSI model, we have connected on L2, L1, but we haven't connected on L3. So that is what our next step is going to be. So how to get an IP address? If the Wi-Fi access point to which you have connected by providing it the credentials, by providing it the passphrase, if it is running a DHCP server, and it is going to be the case in most of the scenarios, and most of the times the DHCP server is always available. There are only some few corner cases in which you will actually find static address in use. So if the DHCP server is there, it doesn't really matter if it is running on the access point or it is running on the LAN. You can use a DH client program to get the IP address on your interface. So as you can observe in the screenshot, you just have to call DH client. Dash V here stands for the verbosity. So which means you are going to see the logs, the output, right, that we are currently seeing on the console, in the screenshot of the console. And then you are defining your interface here. So what you can see here is DHCP request is being sent by our interface through the WLAN 1, and your DHCP request, it is broadcast request. So when a DHCP server is going to get this packet, he is actually going to respond, right? So he's responding and he's letting us use this specific IP. If instead of this request, if we just send a discover, in that case also DHCP server is going to respond and we are going to get a IP address, right? So very easy when you have a DHCP server running on the network on the same Wi-Fi access point. But what if you are dealing with a scenario in which the static addresses are being used? So now in this case, what you can actually do is, first of all, let's talk about the private networks case. So in private networks case, we know that in WEP, WPA2, PSK, right? Once we have the passphrase, by capturing the handshake of other devices with the access point, we can actually decrypt the traffic that they are exchanging after that, right? So it is very easy there because you have the passphrase. We are assuming, right, that we have Wi-Fi layer connectivity. So you have the passphrase, and now you can decrypt the traffic. You can see what IP ranges they are using, and then accordingly you can select IP in the same range, and it will work. You can also see to which machine they are making request and all of that. If you are dealing with enterprise network, that is WPA enterprise, obviously you won't be able to decrypt the traffic of other machines. But in that case also, because right, after we perform the four-way handshake, we actually have GTK with us. And why do we use GTK? GTK is used for the multicast and broadcast packets, right? So by using that, again, it is a little bit more trickier than it sounds right now. But what can be done in that case is we can look for the multicast and the broadcast frames. And from there, we can try to get an idea, because if someone is sending ARP request or something, you will be able to see the range in that. In similar manner, you can also try to find out the DHCP server and all of that. Sorry, the DNS server, I meant to say. So that's the second step. What we can do next? Next, what we can try is we can try to attack the Wi-Fi router itself. because we have an IP layer connectivity with it now. So we can run all the tools and then we can try to pawn it. That is again one more thing that we can perform then. How to do that? First of all, whenever we are trying to attack any machine, whenever we are trying to pen test any machine, what we do, we actually launch a nmap scan on it. Why? We are trying to find out which services are actually running on it. So do that first. It will give you a list, right? Just like in this case, we can see there are 3 ports open. There are 3 services that are running. Again, it's not the full scan. We are just using the default scan of nmap, but you can do better when you are trying to do it in real world. So we can see that the SSH is there, HTTP is there, and the domain name service, that is DNS, is there. So now what we can do is we can try to attack the SSH and the HTTP. We can try to open what it is, right? If it is a web UI, we can try to see if it is asking for the password, if it is protected by basic auth or something, right? And then we can attack it. Now, most of the cases, especially when we are dealing with a Soho or a home environment, in that case, it is possible, and it happens more than we think it will. In a lot of cases, people are using default credentials that are shipped with their device, and the lists of these default credentials are present in GitHub. So that can be the first thing that we try when we are trying to guess the credentials. So manufacturer and model based lists are available, and that those can be used to perform the dictionary attacks. That is one. Similarly, you also have the weak credentials, right? Similar thing. You can try to get a popular password word list, and then you can try to do dictionary attack with that. That is the easiest thing that we can do as first. Similarly, if the SSH service is running, we can try to attack that. If you don't know how to attack a SSH service, how to perform dictionary attack, how to perform recon, how to do this using your Python scripts, right? All of that. How to perform SSH hijacking, all of that, if you don't know, we do have labs. I have added the links here, as you can observe. So you can try them out. It's not directly related to Wi-Fi. If you're interested, you can take a look at it. Similarly, if we have a web UI, which in most cases is going to be there, then in that case, we can try some attacks uh, based on the web application pen testing, or we can also try to perform your dictionary attack on the basic auth or the digest auth if something like that is used to protect the web UI. So I have also added links to the web server recon labs that actually deal with how to attack your basic auth, digest auth, how to determine if the basic auth is in use or the digest auth is in use. If it is a proper web application with the form and everything, in that case, you can take a look at the web application pen testing course, right? If you want to pen test it. Similarly, one more related lab is the port knocking one, right? So you can also take a look at that. Then the next thing that we can do, if nothing till here works, we can look for CVEs, because we know how frequently we update the Wi-Fi access points or Wi-Fi routers that are working at our home, or even in industry. If you are talking about a SME, it is possible that it will be outdated. When you're talking about large companies, they have proper companies with AMCs and all, right? And most of the times these devices, these are provided by your enterprise grade provider, right? So for example, it is going to be a Cisco, Aruba, right? Arista or something like that, or Ubiquiti. So in that case, what these vendors do, they actually allow you to manage all of these machines from one place, right? From one uh, UI, from one central point. So for them, it is very easy to push updates. As soon as they get the update, they actually can update all of these access points uh, using different strategies. So it is less likely now to find a well-maintained corporate network with a Wi-Fi access point that is not updated. But it is very common when you talk about the SMEs and the home environments. So what you can actually do is you can find the vulnerabilities that are reported and that are publicly known, and then you can try to attack that vulnerability because you have IP layer connection, right? And how to do that? You can open a site like this, that is Mitre, right? And you can just search for the vendor. If you have the the name of the device also, the model name, that's even better because then you will be able to pinpoint that one. And it is easily, it can be easily uh, find out by by exchanging packets with it, by inspecting its web UI and all of that. In sometimes on error pages, sometimes on web UI, you will be able to see what the model is. So yeah, once you have that information, then after that you can try to find vulnerabilities like this, and then you can try to find one that will actually help you. So for example, let me search for a good vulnerability here. Yeah, so you can observe here. So it says that TP-Link TLWPA4220. It has also given the build. Let's see which one is it. Okay, so it's a small travel router apparently. Yeah, this is the one. I think yes, this is the one. So for this one, they have shared this. Just a minute. Okay, uh, just a minute. I think I lost that page. Yeah. So for this one, they're saying that the username and the passwords are sent via the cookie, right? So not really something that we can exploit in this case. So you have to actually find a vulnerability that you can use. So something like this, right? And again, you have to spend some time on it, but this is where you do this. So TP-Link Archer C5V, right? It is one of the popular routers. I have seen a lot of these being used in home and office environments. Uh, it allows a remote attacker to retrieve clear text credentials, right, by using this thing. And if you find, a POC for it, so let me find a POC for it. Let's see if we can find it. So in first go, we are not able to find it. But if you spend some time, it is not very difficult to find POCs like this, right? So for example, here you can see a POC for some other vulnerability. So sometimes the people who actually report these issues, they also host the POCs on their GitHubs and on their blogs, right? So if you find that, it becomes easier to exploit. Otherwise, you have to spend some more time. Similarly, for D-Link, just give the company name, the brand name, and it is going to show you the vulnerabilities that are relevant. Similarly, if there is an open FTP service, or if you have a web-based file service, which is allowing you to upload, a file, you can try to see if this arbitrary file upload vulnerability is there, and if it is allowing you to get RCE, that is remote code injection or execution, right? Similarly, as I already mentioned, if you have a web UI, OWASP top 10 also applies. You can see which one you can use. If nothing of this is working and you are very determined to get into that specific Wi-Fi access point, you can even try to download the firmware and try to reverse engineer it to find something. We do have some basic labs on firmware analysis, so you can take a look at those too. So now, if you are able to gain access to the Wi-Fi access point, then it is really good because you are now literally controlling every aspect of the connecting device. You can change the DNS server. You can make sure that their traffic is going somewhere else before it is hitting the recommended server, right? You even open up your own VPN to the attacker machine. Every traffic packet is going to be inside that VPN. It will go onto the attacker machine, that is on internet, and there you can then run your attacks, MITM, data analysis, all of that you can do. You can interfere with the DNS requests, and all of attacks can be launched. But if that is not done, if you cannot do that for various reasons, in that case, what you can try to do then you can try to find the IP address of the LAN interface of the Wi-Fi access point, because that will then give you the range of the LAN site, right? So from there, you can try to find the IP addresses of the machines that are on the wired network, and then you can try to attack those. To find this, IP, again, you have to try to inspect the traffic. You can see, what is the address of the DHCP, what is the address of DNS. If they are not hosted on the Wi-Fi access point, you are going to get IP, which will be on the wired LAN side, right? So similarly, once you can find the IP address or the range of your wired LAN machines, you can then try to attack those. In the labs, I'm very sure that by now you must have noticed this, that when you are performing a curl, right? So just a minute. So in the lab scenario, this is how it is. We have our simulated router here, right, which is hosting some SSID. And this is your machine that is given to you with the two interfaces. This is just a way to represent it. Obviously, it is an emulated environment, so not really like this. So this is your machine, that is your Kali machine in most cases. And now what you do is you try to connect to this after you have password and credentials. Once you have the Wi-Fi layer connectivity, after that you use DHCP requests using the DH client to get the IP address, right? And in this case, we are actually running a DHCP server on this. So once you have the IP address with you, after that, if you try to scan this using Nmap, you will actually find in most cases, we have a port 80 running. And if you run a curl request on this, which is like opening the page in the web browser, you will actually get the IP address of the LAN site. Now, why this is done? Because obviously it's an emulated router. It has its limitations, what it can do and what it cannot, right? That is first thing. Second thing, we don't want to make this more complicated to you. We are actually focusing on the pivoting to your wired network side here, right? Rather than breaking into access point. That's why it is actually telling you what is the IP range of this network that is on this side, right? The wired LAN. Once you have that, you can then look for the other machines using the same range. And once you find those, you can then try to attack those, right? This is how we have done it in the lab. Obviously, when you are doing it in real world, it is not going to give you the IP address, you on the curl request. And that's the reason why we discussed all of this thing. That was the reason. So now let's come back to what we have discussed last time. So I'm very sure that you remember, and I think you have also tried the PEEP MS chap. Okay, just 1 minute. Yeah. So I'm very sure that you have also tried the enterprise attack that we learned last time, right? So what was the scenario? This is our client machine. This is your Wi-Fi access point that is actually hosting a WPA enterprise. WPA enterprise network that is using PEEP MS chap v2, right? So PEEP is your protection, and then MS chap v2 uh, is the authentication method that you are using inside the PEEP tunnel, right, or the TLS tunnel. So this is the scenario. Now, what we did there at that time, so you have your legitimate client also somewhere here, right? It was connected to the real access point. What we did using our machine, using our attacker machine, we actually hosted a fake evil twin, which has the same name as this guy. We forced this guy, this legitimate client, to connect to our honeypot, right? By sending the deauthentication, we disconnected it from the real network. And after that, we waited it to connect to our machine. And when it connects to our machine, right, because we are running a honeypot using your EPHammer or using your hostapd mana, it is actually going to show its username That is the first thing. And the second thing was challenge. And then there was response. Challenge is provided by the AAA server, and response is again provided by the client, right? And your username is also provided by the client. It is the real client, right? It is not the attacker that we are. We are the attacker here. So by taking this information, we used to run hashcat or JTR, that is Jack the Ripper, and then you have asleep also. So we used to run these three tools with a dictionary file, right? And if the password is present in this dictionary file, we are going to get the password. And then we have the username as well as the password. And we can then use this combination to connect to this guy here and perform attacks, right? That is how it used to work. But now think of this scenario. Suppose the password that our client was using, the credential pair, right? The username and the password is very strong. Or for some reason, it is not in our dictionary. The dictionary that we are using to run the dictionary attack, it is not there. So obviously the dictionary attack is not going to work. So what we can do in this case? Is there something that we can perform, right? Uh, so that is where this scenario will come into play, right? So can we perform a kind of MITM, that is man in the middle, where we can take the real, uh, so what we want to do here is we want to perform something like this, right? What we are trying to do, we are trying to be the middleman between the real client, right? So here in this case, this is your real client. This is the legitimate client. This is your legitimate SSID, right? Now this and this, obviously they can connect, right? Because it has the right credentials, it has the right AAA connected to it, which is going to validate, right? Everything is good. Now because we as attacker, we were not able to get the password from this guy, right? Password is not there. We are not able to recover it even when we got our hands on the challenge and the response and the username. That's the scenario. So now what we are trying to do here is we are trying to get between these two parties as an attacker, right? So we are the attacker here. We are the MITM attacker, actually, man in the middle attacker. And what we want to do is we want to create two services on our attacker machine, right? That is our machine. So we want one part of it to be the host APD and second part of it to be WPA supplicant. Why? We want to create a honeypot here, which will use the same SSID as your enterprise SSID, right? And it is also running here. So it is actually an evil twin. This network is evil twin. So what we want to do is when this guy, this legitimate client will actually see this SSID, it will try to connect, right? And because we have all the setup here, we are going to let it connect. We are going to issue it a challenge. And this guy is going to give us the response, right? But as an attacker, we were not able to run dictionary attack, so we are not able to recover the password. But can we pass it to this WPA supplicant, which can then try to connect to this SSID and pass this to AAA? So suppose, think like this. So we have this connection, we have this SSID, this legitimate client is connected here. Authentication is still in progress. It is just the Wi-Fi connection. They are exchanging packets. Similarly, this guy is connected to real SSID, right? This is real and this is evil twin. All right. So now think of this in this way. Your client provides a username. This guy takes the username. The username is passed to this guy here. And this guy is providing username, same username to this, right? So you take username from here, it is passed here, and from here it is being passed here. And from there it will be passed to real AAA, right? Now, real AAA server, it is going to give a challenge. We are going to, and this access point, this is the access point. It is going to give this challenge to this guy. This guy is going to give this challenge to this guy, and this guy is going to present this challenge to this guy, the legitimate client, right? So please remember, this guy, your client, it has real credentials, right? Because it is the legitimate client. Now, when this guy will get the challenge, obviously it was expecting the challenge, right? So it is going to create the response. The response will be passed to this, and from here it will be passed to WPA supplicant, and it is then going to represent this response to enterprise SSID. It will be given to AAA, and because the client knows the correct password, the AAA will be able to verify this response, and it will allow this guy to connect to network. And that is what we want as an attacker, right? We have a foothold on this network now. And from here, you can get your IP address. Once you have the IP address, you can then start all the attacks that we just discussed. So this attack that we just discussed is known to be PEEP relay attack. This is the PEEP relay attack, right? So how to perform that? PEEP relay attack is documented and found by SensePost. So they have presented it in DEF CON, right? Uh, and this is what I have just explained to you in the diagram, right? It is the official diagram taken from their blog. Uh, so let's take a look at the demo part, and after that, if you have any questions regarding this, we can take that. So we do have a lab on this, and you can try this out in the lab. So I'm selecting the server region to be more precise. And then I'm running the lab. We are told that this global central bank SSID is the one that we have to target. We open the lab, we are inside the lab, and we are listing the interfaces because that is what we do as our first step. We can see that there are 3 interfaces. We are using WLAN 2 for the monitoring. So we are putting it in monitor mode, and after that we are running aerodump ng on it. And there you go. You can observe that a global central bank SSID is running on channel 6. So we are fixing aerodump on channel 6. And when we do, we will be able to see that this global central bank SSID, this is the BSSID for this. And if we check the connected clients, we will actually see that one client is actually connected to it. And we can also see the data packets being exchanged between these two. So this is the setup that we have to attack. But we cannot use the previous approach because the credential, the password that is being used by this guy, are very strong. So we cannot perform dictionary attack on it. So we know this much now. And what we have to do is we have to open another tab, and we are writing the apconf. This is the access point configuration, right? And this is for hostapd mana. So you have already seen most of it. The new thing here that we have added in this configuration is this part. So we are enabling the sycophant, and then we are telling it the sycophant directory, that is the temp. So what is sycophant here? Sycophant is the one that is going to play the rogue WPA supplicant, which can also communicate with hostapd mana. So this hostapd mana tool is, it is created by SensePost. So once you enable the sycophant and you define the directory, this is the directory that sycophant and hostapd mana are going to use to exchange these packets, to exchange these messages, right, to and fro. So you save this. After that, if you remember, we also have to create the hostapd eep user file, which is going to be something like this. It is, exactly same what we have done in the PEEP MS CHAP V2 lab. Once this much is done, you can actually run hostpd mana with this configuration. And as you can observe, it is running. We have global central bank evil twin up. So now it's time to configure the other part, that is WPA Sycophant. It is available inside the lab on the main desktop. If you want to download it, you can do that from the GitHub. If you want to run it on your local setups. Again, please remember this attack, it is going to need two interfaces. It won't work with one interface. So now here we can observe this is the example configuration file that we have. Just a minute. This one, right? This is the example configuration file of your WPA Sycophant. And what we are trying to do here is we are trying to modify this configuration for our purpose. So first modification that we are going to do is the SSID, and SSID is Global Central Bank. So we will change that. That is the first change. Second change that we want to do, right? So we are copying the SSID and we are going to paste the SSID here. Second change is we are going to update the BSSID of this SSID in the BSSID blacklist. Why? Because we are hosting a evil twin with the same SSID. So our fake client that we are going to just create, it can also try to connect to that, right? But we don't want that because that is of no use. We want it to try to connect to the real one. And that's why we are defining the BSSID of our own honeypot in the blacklist. So our client, right, our fake client is not going to connect to this then. So this is the change that we have to perform. And after that, we can run WPA supplicant. We can define the interface, that is WLAN1. We can define the configuration file. As you know, we have just modified WPA Sycophant example.conf. So we do that and it is running, it is up. And it is also communicating with your hostpd mana now. It is waiting for the action. Now, because the client that is there is connected to the legitimate SSID, we have to disconnect it, right? Otherwise, it won't connect to our evil twin, and then in that case, we won't get any, any information from this. So for that, what we are doing, we are running the deauthentication attack. As you can observe here, I can use WLAN2 for this purpose because WLAN2 is in monitor mode and it is on channel 6. That is where the real SSID is also present. So that's why it is working. If it is on another channel, it won't work. So as soon as the deauthentication flood is sent, you can observe that this client has tried to connect to our evil twin. The username here looks to be admin. And then we have the challenge and response, right? This is the challenge, this is the response. But as we know, right, dictionary attack won't work. So we will not try that. But what you will also observe is all of these things, right? Whatever we have gotten here, it is being passed to the WPA Sycophant. And WPA Sycophant is then passing these to the real SSID. And on doing that, we can observe here in the logs, it says success, EAP success, right? EAP is successful, PMKSK cache added, right? Client is connected. So our client interface is now connected to the legitimate SSID without us knowing the credentials. And we can verify the same in this output also, right? There you go. You can observe here that our WLAN1 is in managed mode. It is connected to SSID Global Central Bank, and it is on channel 6. So now we can stop the hostpd mana if we like to, because this guy is already connected. And because it is connected, we can then try to check the interface. And what we just observed was The IP address is also present on the interface. This is the IP address on our WLAN 1. Why? Because the tool itself is trying to get a DHCP lease, and it has gotten one. And now you can perform ping to the Wi-Fi access point, and then you can perform the other activities. So this is how your PEEP relay attack actually works. So if you have any questions, guys, please ask. Please put your doubts, your questions in the in the live instructor interaction channel. If anything is not clear, just let me know, and I will be happy to repeat it. Okay. So I'm going to take that as a no for questions. So this is the first assignment here. Please do this lab. Try this out. The main mistake that most people make is the BSSID blacklist. So make sure that you are updating that. Don't just change the SSID. Also, make sure that your BSSID is in the blacklist. Otherwise, it won't work. So will this attack going to work all the time? That is the question. So obviously not. If the user is not accepting the rogue certificate, right? If you remember, I was telling you in last session that if your client is not accepting a dubious certificate, which it is not, very sure about, you are actually secure, right? None of this will work, because it is working because we are able to circumvent your PEEP and TTLS protection. And that is because your client or the user is accepting the fake certificate that our setup is providing to them. So if that happens, it won't work. None of the attacks that we discussed for the WPA enterprise are going to make any difference. Second thing is something called crypto binding. So it comes as an option in the access points and the radius AAA servers, right? So if you enable this, it will make sure that the client that is authenticating with the radius and the client that is using the access point are the same. So if you have crypto binding enabled, which is not enabled in most of the cases, then it won't work. If you want to read more on this, I have mentioned the link to the original blog of SensePost. So you can go there and you can check this out. So now let's discuss about the new thing, the WPA3, that is the worthy successor of WPA2. So again, WPA3 is supported by Wi-Fi Alliance. Once your device supports WPA3 and Wi-Fi Alliance, checks that, you can then say that, okay, the device actually supports WPA3. In the WPA3, there are a lot of new things that people, in the security community especially, and the network administrator community, they were actually waiting for this for quite some long time now. So there are security methods, new handshakes, right? New ways of onboarding the devices. All of those are there. They have even tried to protect the open public network, right? So that is kind of a big leap there. WPA3 doesn't support any kind of outdated protocols, so it is not going to allow you to use WEP. It is not going to allow you to use TKIP or something. Then you also have protected management frame, or that is PMF, right? So what is PMF? Let's understand it right away, because later we are going to refer to this a lot. PMF means you have your management frames, right? If you remember from the session 1, we talked about the management frames. You have beacon frame, you have probe request frames, you have authentication frames, association frames, deauthentication frames, disassociation frames, right? All of those are management frames. Now your management frames, right, they are not authenticated. In the management frame, there is no field which can actually tell the receiver that it is sent by the real sender, right? So there is no way to check for the spoofing. And that is what we are taking advantage of when we are running our deauthentication attacks. So what we do in deauthentication attack, you have your access point, you have your client here, right? Client is access point is here. Now they are both connected, right? They are exchanging data and all. As an attacker, we come here, right? We want them to disconnect from each other. So using our own setup, we actually send a packet to either to client or to attacker, right? And we spoof this packet. So if we are sending this to the client, it will look like that it is coming from the access point. If we are doing the other thing, then it will look like that it is coming from the client, right? And we are able to do this because there is no way for the receiving party to know if the management frame is being sent by the real sender or some attacker like us. So that problem is now taken care of by PMF, that is protected management frame. So in this PMF, what happens is most of your management frames, right? Not all, right? But most of the management frames, they have a field which can only be, which can only be used, or which can only be created. The content of this field can only be created if you know the real key that is required, right? If you don't know the key, you won't be able to generate this, and then the receiver will actually know that you are not the right sender, because the right sender will have this key. That's the whole thing, right? So due to this, what will happen is your deauthentication attack, your disassociation attack, these won't work, right? So that is PMF. So this is something that people are waiting for quite some time now, because anyone with a $5 hardware, right, and some code from internet, he was able to annoy a lot of people when we are talking about high density environments or conferences or the classes or something like that, right? In DEF CON, every year, right, someone is actually performing this attack to disconnect people, and we have seen warnings against it, that okay, please don't do this, other people are annoyed and all. So all of that will actually go away with WPA3. So without spending a lot of time on it, uh, let's move forward. So what is new? So these are the kind of things that we had when we talk about WPA2, and then let's compare what is they're getting replaced with or getting improved with. So we have an open Wi-Fi network. Open Wi-Fi network, as the name suggests, there is no security, there is no privacy, right? And we have dealt with the traffic as well as the network aspect of it in session one. We discussed the shortfall and all of that, right? So this is going to be replaced by something called OWE, or opportunistic wireless encryption. Okay, that is first change. Second change is your WPA2 personal is going to be replaced with the WPA3 SAE, or simultaneous authentication of equals. Don't worry, we are going to deep dive into each of these, so it will become more clear to you what these are, right? Similarly, your WPA2 enterprise, it is going to be replaced by WPA3 enterprise. Not a lot of changes are there in this case. And the Wi-Fi protected setup, or the WPS, right, which we know is vulnerable, it should not be enabled on your Wi-Fi device, is getting replaced with the DPP, or device provisioning protocol, right? So this is the new part. Now it is very important that before diving into WPA3, so what we are going to do in this section, let me first give you an idea of that. We are going to understand how WPA3 works, how your OWE and SAE are working, how they are able to protect things, and how they are not going to succumb to the same attacks which were there for WPA2 PSK and open networks, if you compare apples to apples. So that is what we are going to learn. Then we will also going to learn some of the attacks that were proposed on those. But conducting those attacks is very difficult. In most of the cases, it's a very strict setup that you are going to need. And those are also patched by most of the vendors, if not all, because when they made the disclosure about these WPA3, before that they actually told these vendors, right? So vendors have already patched these. I'm very sure that by now your small office, home office vendors like D-Link, TP-Link, and all, they have also covered all of those, because most of those things were related to implementation. There were design flaws which are also taken care of by now. The same actually is true for the frag attacks. So we are going to discuss about the frag attacks. We are mainly going to discuss about the main attack that they have. But the thing is, it is not going to work anymore in the real world, because all of these are problems in implementations, or something which can be corrected with implementation, right? They have design flaws, but those design flaws can also be taken care of by the engineers that are implementing those. So we are going to discuss that, but creating setups for these attacks are done in controlled environments, and to perform them in real world, it's not impossible, but it is very difficult. And even if we somehow do that, even if we somehow able to do this, these won't work in the real world because they are already patched, right? So that is what is remaining on our agenda for today. So guys, let's start with Diffie-Hellman exchange. Once the Diffie-Hellman exchange is completed, after that, we are going to take our 5-minute break, and then we will move with the remaining part. So what is Diffie-Hellman exchange? Diffie-Hellman exchange is a way to exchange the confidential information on a public channel. And don't worry about it. If you're not able to understand, I have a very simple and easy way of explaining this. It is obviously proposed by Whitfield Diffie and Martin Hellman in 1976. So it is not new. It is just getting adapted in Wi-Fi for the first time now. And 1976, as you know, it is before the RSA was actually proposed. RSA, we all know, right? The company, the public-private crypto algo, which was given by the Ron Rivest, Adi Shamir, and Leonard Edelman. And these guys actually got Turing Prize for this also, this contribution. So Turing is like the Nobel of your computer science. So yeah, cool thing to know. Uh, so let's talk about how Diffie-Hellman exchange works. So first we are going to use this example, which is very easy to follow. And then we will see how to implement it in the mathematics. Again, I will not drag you into the complicated mathematics, right? But we will see how all of this is done. If you are interested in going deeper, then we can do that later offline. But for most of people, it is not very interesting to go into equations, so we will leave that part out. So here, let's first see what kind of assumptions we have and what is the objective, right? So this thing here, right? You have two parties, Alice, Bob, right? So think of this like this scenario. It's a long bench. Alice is sitting here. Bob is sitting here, right? And if I just change the color, this is the third guy. So you have Alice, Bob, and Charles. Charles is the bad guy. Just like every time, he is the bad guy. These are friends, right? Now, what is scenario here? What is our objective? Objective is these two are friends. They want to generate a color that is same, right? But they don't want this guy to know about that color. That is the objective, right? So our Alice, just a minute, our Alice and Bob, they want to generate a color in a beaker that they have. They want this color to be same, right? But they don't want this guy to know. And the thing is, the restriction here is that they have to pass whatever information they want to share with each other using this method. So this guy is going to be in the middle all the time. There is no way around. Whatever this guy will speak, whatever Alice or Bob is going to speak, Charles is going to hear that. If they send something over to each other, Charles is going to have a look at that, right? That is the definition of your public channel, public unsecure channel or insecure channel, right? So now how they can do this? That is what can be accomplished by using Diffie-Hellman exchange. That is how you can generate a shared secret. Shared because it is shared between Alice and Bob. Secret because it is going to be a color that they don't want Charles to know about, right? How to do this? Now, this is the scenario. Objective is clear. Now, let's see the assumptions here. What are the assumptions? Assumption number one is attacker can see what kind of color, what kind of things that they are exchanging. That is first thing. Attacker can hear everything. And then attacker knows these two things. So, sorry, these two will come. Let's keep them aside for now. Attacker knows that both of them, they have this color with them to start with, right? This is the color, and then they also have other colors, but this is known to attacker that they are going to use this beaker which already have this liquid with this color, right? That is the assumption. Uh, so when Alice has this beaker, right? This is the beaker, this is the color. Alice is going to select a color, which in Alice case, this is the color, and Alice is going to mix it with the beaker that she has with the common paint. So this beaker is same for Alice and Bob. Even Charles has one beaker like this. He also knows what it is. So Alice selects this color, this side, right? So she is doing it by hiding this from Charles. So now she takes this color, she mixes this color, and she sends this beaker to Charles. Charles will pass this beaker to Bob. So Charles can see that this color is there, right? So this color is known to Charles. And this color is, this beaker is then gone to Bob, right? Charles passed it. Similarly, Bob is also doing the same thing. Bob has this common paint. This is the secret color that Bob is selecting, right? Secret color is selected here, so Charles won't be able to see. And then Bob is mixing it with this solution, which is known to everyone. And this is the color that is coming in. This is going to be passed to Charles. Charles is taking a look, and Charles is passing this to Alice, right? So Alice has this one now. So what what Charles knows? Charles knows this color. Charles knows this color. Charles also knows that it started from here. But Charles does not know these two colors. That is the main thing, right? These were secret. These were never sent. Alice and Bob never, used their names. They never passed these colors. Now, what will happen here is Alice, when it will receive the beaker from Bob, it is again going to mix its secret color to this, and then this color will become this, something like this. Similarly, Bob, when it gets the container from Alice, it is also going to add this color into this, and then again you are going to get the same color. How? Because see what all you are mixing. You are mixing this, this in this case. Similarly, in other case, you are mixing this, and this. So we are actually mixing the same colors, just the order is different. Now we know that mixing colors, order is not really important in this case, right? So whatever way you do it, right, it is going to be the same. And this is the common secret. This is again secret. It is not sent over the channel. Alice and Bob have this common secret now without Charles knowing about it. So that is the Diffie-Hellman exchange in the example. Guys, is it clear? Do you need more explanation on it? It is important that you understand this because it is going to play a lot of uh, parts in the OWE, in the SAE. Just say yes or something if it is clear to you, just so that I know you guys can hear me, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, cool, cool. So if you have any questions later, you can ask them. But this is the Diffie-Hellman exchange in the easiest way possible. Now, this is how you do this in with the colors. But obviously, you cannot do this in the air with Wi-Fi access points and with the other parties over the internet, right? You cannot send colors. So what you can send? You can actually send some math. So what is the math here? You have two parties, because that is where this scheme is needed. You have two parties who want to exchange some information. This is your client or station, and this is your access point, the other party. This is air, right? They are connecting over air, which means this is an insecure media, because anyone with a valid with a capable monitor mode interface can actually capture the traffic, and he can take a look at the traffic, right? So this is the definition of your insecure media. Anyone with a card is Charles, and this is your Alice, this is your Bob. So what they do in this case, just like the common paint, you have these things here which are known to everyone. It's called generator G, it's called modulus P. I'll come to it what it is, but for now you can just understand. You can just think that G and P is known to everyone, to attacker, to Alice, to Bob, everyone, just like the color. Now what you do is you take this G, you select a random number, you can say number for now, that is X, and then you create your public key by raising the G to the power X. So G is a number, X is a number, everything is a number, right? So X is your private key here, G raised to power X is your public key. Similarly, on the access point side, select a random number, take it as your private key, take G, raise the G power to Y, and this is your public key, right? So something like this. So let's see, G is your 10, X is your 3, here Y is your 4, G raised to power X is going to be 1000, G raised to power is going to be 10,000, right? So something like this. So this is your public key, this is your private key. This is your private key, this is your public key for this party. This is for this party, right? Now send G raised to power X to other side. Similarly, G raised to power will be sent to the other side. And now what these guys will do, once it gets G raised to power X, it is going to take G raised to power X, and it also has Y, right? So raise it to power Y. What this will become? It will become G raised to power Yx. Similarly, in this case also, you get G raised to power Y. You raise it with power X, that is the private key here, right? And what you get? You get G raised to power Yx, which is again same to this, right? So you are getting the same shared secret. SS means shared secret, right? Now all of this is good, and you can all again use your maths to verify the same thing. On both sides, you are going to have 10 raised to power 7. Now this will work provided that on getting G raised to power X and on knowing G, attacker, that is Charles, right, is not able to find out what is the X. That is what the assumption here is, that is holding the security, right? If this is known, then you are not secure anymore. Just a minute. Okay, yeah. So for any number G, P, X, if you have G raised to power X, it should be impossible for you to find X, right? Why? The guarantee is provided by a mathematical problem that is called discrete logarithm, right? So if you have discrete logarithm problem, if it is holding, then this thing is also good, and then Diffie-Hellman exchange is safe. It is a known problem. It is not, there is no way to find, they haven't found any way to solve this efficiently, right? Is it quantum safe? No, it is not. But for now, it is safe because you don't really have uh, very efficient quantum computers in use right now. So now again, when I explained it, I took G and P as small numbers just to explain to you. But obviously, if you are using G and P that small, it is obviously possible to find out X, right? By hit and trial, you can find X and Y. So for that reason, G and P are very large numbers. G, P, and even X and Y, they are also large numbers. So how large? 512 bits large, and I'll show you an example. Uh, and this G and P, right? They are selected in such a way that they are special. How they are special? They, when you use G and P, right? They will actually give you a cyclic group with generator G, right? Now, if you are interested in going into math, you can do that, on your own. And if you find any difficulties, just let me know. From previous experiences of previous batches, I have seen that people were not very enthusiastic about jumping into math. So I'm just going to go through it over it very, very quickly. And if you want to follow up, we can take it offline. So for now, you can just think of this specific condition that when you want to select this G and P, it needs to adhere to the cyclic group with the generator G, right? Uh, so with that, if we move, so how to select G and P, right, in practice? So here we know how to do it in theory, but in practice, how I am going to find such a numbers which are so big, right? They are 512 bits long. I want to find them, and I also have to make sure that they follow some criteria, right? I cannot do that. So for that reason, we have mod P groups. What are mod P groups? Mod P groups are actually defined P, Q, and G. So if I select this one, this is the mod P group, right? Generator is 2, and then you have the other number. To make it clear, let me show you this. This is for mod P group 1024. This is the P, this is the G, and this is the Q. And this is obviously a hexadecimal representation, right? Uh, if you represent it in decimal, this will look like something like this. If you convert it into number, right? This is how it will look like. This is P, this is J, this is Q. You can see pretty big, right? So that is why your mathematical problem, right? This one, discrete log, is actually holding. So now this was how we used to do it in theory, right? In real world, it is going to be changed a little bit. So after you have the shared secret computed, which is same on both sides, right? We have already covered this part. Uh, what you are going to do is you are not going to use this directly. You are going to create a symmetric key that is taken by using the computed secret that is here, computed shared secret. And then you will also take some information I, that is the device information like MAC and other things. And using that, you are going to find a symmetric key SK, and this symmetric key SK will be then used to encrypt the data. That is uh, the way you will use it in practice, right? Now, what's the problem with Diffie-Hellman? Diffie-Hellman problem is it is vulnerable to MITM. It has no way to check if the other party is the legitimate party. It is not doing that. It is just assuming that the other party that I'm communicating with is the right one, right? So it is obviously vulnerable to man in the middle attacks. Uh, what are the strengths of Diffie-Hellman exchange? Perfect forward secrecy. It is, if you remember from session 3, you already know what perfect forward secrecy is. If you don't remember, just let me know. I'll remind you. Uh, it is eavesdropper proof, which means even when the attacker can see all of our exchange, he won't be able to calculate the shared secret, right? That is what we have seen in the example where we had Alice, Bob, and Charles, right? Even when we were sending everything through Charles, Charles was not able to find out what the color was that was created by Alice and Bob in the end. Now, one more thing that you might see, and in practice, you are definitely going to see this, is uh, DH and ECDH, use of these two terms. DH refers to Diffie-Hellman, that is there, and in most of the cases, it will be written as DHE, that is Diffie-Hellman exchange. So when you find only DHE written in there, it is the classical way of doing it. It is the finite field crypto that is being used, and that is where the mod-p groups that I just showed to you will be used. Whereas in other cases, you might see ECDH, and most of the cases you are going to see that actually. In ECDH, it is again DH stands for Diffie-Hellman, but it is not using your finite field crypto, that is the classical one. It is using the modern elliptic curve crypto, that is ECC. And again, you're going to hear this term a lot if you are dealing with some kind of crypto, because ECC is actually taking over from this classical mod p thing. And just like we had standardized mod p groups, right? We also have standardized elliptic curves. So what happens is, if you remember about the mod p groups, in the mod p groups, it was telling me that, okay, this is G, this is P, and now you can use this information to perform your DH group. In elliptic curves, these points are taken from a elliptic curve. That's where the name is coming from, elliptic curve crypto, right? And these curves are very, these are very specific curves. It can't be any other curve. So it is, standardized. So we can use any one of these, and accordingly, then we will get parameters that we can use. Why we are shifting to ECDH? Why industry is shifting to ECDH? Because ECDH provides more security, more security with lower bits of symmetric key size. So for example, the same level of security will be provided, when we are using a symmetric key with AES, right? So ECDH will actually provide this security with 521 bits, whereas if you deal with DH, right, that's the older one, it is going to provide us 15,360 bits will be taken to provide the same level of security, right? So guys, let's take the 5-minute break, and after that we will continue with the OWE, or opportunistic wireless encryption. I'm expecting this session is going to go a little bit beyond the planned time. I think 30 more minutes will be taken because we have frag attacks also. So if you guys have to leave early for something that is already planned, feel free to. Anyway, we are recording everything, so you are going to get it. So I'll see you in 5 minutes. Welcome back, guys. So let's start with OWE, or opportunistic wireless encryption. So OWE is a way or an attempt to provide privacy on the open Wi-Fi network. So if you are already familiar with open Wi-Fi networks now. So we are talking about a scenario where you are at an airport or a coffee shop, and there you have Wi-Fi access points which are hosting SSIDs that are without any protection, right? So these are the open networks. Anyone with a valid, client can actually connect to these. Now, some of these they actually use authentication by using the OTP, right, or your social media login, login with Facebook and all, right? But even after that, they are just providing the authentication. They are not providing any kind of encryption to secure the packets that you are exchanging with the SSID. So anyone, if there is an attacker who's there with his laptop and maybe a card, right, that is monitor mode capable, he can capture all the traffic that you are exchanging. And after capturing this, he can then, apply analytics on it. He can try to see what you are doing and all, right? Privacy breach. So what opportunistic wireless encryption is trying to do is, obviously they cannot solve the issue of authentication by giving out the passphrases. Uh, this can be handled with OTP and social media login or something. However, what OTP or what OWE is trying to do is it is trying to provide you a encrypted path here. So whatever you are sending inside it, it is not visible to your attacker. How to do that? So, we just learned about our DHE, that is Diffie-Hellman exchange. So what they're doing is they are using ECDHE, they're applying ECDHE, and in this case, this is the party one, this is the party two, and this is your insecure media. So by using ECDHE, we are generating the shared secret on both sides, and then this shared secret is being used to create the encrypted tunnel, right? So that is what we are trying to do here. So once your device becomes OWE certified, the industry friendly name is actually enhanced open. So it will be known that this device supports enhanced open. This is the packet flow. First of all, your client will come. You have your access point here. So the authentication request and response, right? These are not really request and response. Request and response we just use to help you in seeing the direction of these packets. Otherwise, it is just authentication packet. So authentication packets are being exchanged. After that, association requests and response, these packets, right? These are exchanged. But in this case, it is not your old association request and response, right? It is a different association request and response that you are sending here. What is the difference here? As you can observe here, it also contains RSNIE, which actually stands for Robust Security Network Information Element, right? And if you remember, RSNIE is something that we use in the beacon frames of your WPA PSK and WPA2 PSK, and even the WPA Enterprise, right? In the beacons, this frame is there. So it can tell the clients what kind of security scheme a specific network is using. The second IE that it has is OWE DHIE. OWE, as we know, stands for Opportunistic Wireless Encryption, and DHIE is obviously the Diffie-Hellman Information Exchange element, right? IE. So association request is sent by the station, and then association response is sent by the access point with these two additional information elements. Once this much is done, because we are actually passing the DH parameters here, So though both of these sides, they can actually create the share secret, and then they can also derive the PMK. And if you remember in WPA PSK's case, PMK is the one that we need on both sides. Even in the case of WPA Enterprise, once you have the PMK, after that, what do you need? You need a PTK, that is the transient key, that is the temporary key. And how do you do that? You actually perform your four-way handshake for that. And that is exactly what we are doing here, right? Uh, so once you have the PMK on both sides, you can then derive PTK, and then you can use this PTK for all the other purposes. So Diffie-Hellman exchange is applied to open network, and then it becomes OWE, right? This is your Diffie-Hellman, and this is your OWE. So first of all, you have your client and access point. So let me mark it for you. This is your station, and this is your access point, right? Uh, as we discussed before, 4 packets are already exchanged. Not actually 4, 2. You have authentication packet that is going from the station to the access point, and then you have again authentication packet that is going from access point to station, the normal authentication open packets. After that, station will generate its own ECDH private and public key. Similarly, your access point is also doing the same. It is also generating the ECDH private and public key. As you can observe, these pairs are obviously going to be different. That's why we have used dash here, right? And this side dash is not there to show the difference, to depict the difference. And then you have association request that is going from the station to the access point. And in this, the group ID and the public key is being shared. Now, what is the group ID? So if you remember when we were talking about DH, right, or ECDH, I was telling you that these elliptic curves or these groups that we have to use are already standardized, right? We have to just use those. To tell the other party which group to use, there is this group number that they use. So it is like, group number 19, group number 20. So this is going to tell the other party that we have to use this specific group. Then you have the public key of the uh, of this guy here, right, which is being sent to the other guy. Similarly, in this case also, the same thing is being done. And as we know from our Diffie-Hellman exchange, right, once you have the public key of other side, you can use your own private key and raise it to the power of that, and you can get the common secret. So similarly, we have calculated the common secret. After that, to calculate the PMK, we are using common secret, and then we are using labels. What are the labels? The MAC addresses and all of that. The MAC address of the access points and all other things. So by doing that, you actually get PMK, right, which is a 256-bit master key. And after that, we know we are going to perform a four-way handshake, which is just like we used to do in WPA and WPA2 PSK, and even enterprise, right, for that matter. So once you have the PTK, after that, obviously, in the third packet of your exchange, you also share GTK, right? And once GTK is shared, after that, you can start encrypting things, and you can then exchange the traffic. So this is how your OWE works. Again, a legend here for the diagram that was there. You already know all of this. I'll just skip it. So in this case, can an adversary, right, there can an attacker, can he derive the key? That's the question. Obviously not, because the common secret is g raised to power yx, right? And again, a lot of people miss this thing here, so I'll just draw it. Uh, so in this case, we know that doesn't really matter if you are taking g raised to power and raising it to x, or you are taking gx to the y, it is going to be the same, right? X and y, or y or x, or however you want to write it. The attacker can capture g raised to power y, g raised to power x, but he cannot capture x or y because these never left the device. Now, sometimes this confusion is there that, okay, that g raised to power y is here, g raised to power x is there. Can't we create g raised to power xy with it? Unfortunately, we cannot. So if you take g raised to power y and if you multiply it with g raised to power x, you are not going to get g raised to power xy, but you are going to get g x plus y, right? That's the difference, because here you are actually raising them with power. You are actually multiplying them. Here, when you are multiplying the whole thing, here you were doing it for the powers only. Here you are doing it for the full. So it will actually become g raised to power x plus y, or y plus x, right? Same thing. So it is not same to this thing, and hence the attacker cannot find this. And because you are not able to generate this common secret, you won't be able to generate PMK, and then you won't be able to generate PTK and so on, right? So it is safe, it is secure. In addition to OWE, what all we have? So in the OWE, obviously we have all of this ECDHE handshake, which is making it secure. The second thing that you have is PMF. I have already explained PMF, right? The protected management frames. And then another thing is the PMK caching. Let me also again explain what PMK caching is. Uh, it's again a very good concept, not so much from the security angle, but from the working angle, just so that you know what it is. So suppose you are in a corporate environment. Uh, Obviously, you are going to have multiple access points deployed like this, right? So these are actually hosting the same SSID or multiple SSIDs, but again, those are also going to be same. So for example, suppose you have ABC, company names ABC, so your uh, SSID is also ABC, right? Multiple of these are deployed to cover your whole campus, right? Now, as an user, right, you are here first. If suppose it's your mobile that is connected, it is first connected to this guy here. And when it connects, right, you are actually using WPA Enterprise. So it is, there is a AAA server which is obviously connected to all of the all of these access points, and all of these access points are also connected to wired network, right? Now, thing is, when you first time connect to this guy, you are actually performing the whole connection, operation. So you're following everything that is there in the connection flow. If you remember what we have learned in the previous session about the PEEP MS CHAP V2, right? And you can actually remember easily that there were like 15, 16 packets, right, that we have to exchange. Now 15, 16 packets when you are doing this, right, it obviously for a human it don't seem that much of time, but from machine's perspective it is a lot. And suppose you want to move, you are walking, right, so you will be here sometime, after some time you also be here because you're walking with your phone, right? And because the way everything is planned, right, and this is one of the reason why these devices are covering everything, because when you will walk, right, it this network, it wants you to connect to this BSSID, and then when you are here it wants you to connect to this BSSID. Now at the same time, because of different objectives, we don't want you to again repeat the whole process, right? We don't want you to send your username and then get a challenge and then do the response and then go ahead and again do the whole thing. We don't want you to do that all to get the PMK, right? So what is done? It's called PMK caching and PMK sharing also, right? So in this case, what this guy will do, when it will connect to this, and it comes under 11R actually. It's called uh, fast transition BSS roaming. Uh, 11R is the standard, 802 amendment, sorry. It's called forced BSSID transition. So what happens is, as soon as you are connected to this guy will generate the PMK. Now your access point has PMK, your device has PMK, right? It will share this PMK with the neighboring access points. So this will be sent over the wired LAN to this guy, and in some cases to this guy. It totally depends how it is defined, right? So what will happen when this guy will walk into the range, this access point will identify this guy, and instead of doing the whole thing, this PMK will be directly used. This guy already have the PMK, right? So it is directly going to connect. Similarly, it is going to happen here also. If this guy comes back to here, in that case also, because the PMK is already there, it is not discarded for some time, so you can actually use it. So this is called PMK caching. It improves your experience and all. So this thing is also introduced. So in this manner, your OWE works. So what is the conclusion for OWE? It is obviously a good step. We are trying to provide privacy for the open networks, right? And the authentication problem is already solved in one way. You can use OTP to verify whoever was using the network, and then you can use that to identify him if something goes wrong. Similarly, now you also have the privacy part. If someone is connected to the access point, no one can see what he is actually transmitting and receiving from the access point. That's a good thing. You have PMF, so no one will be able to cause the nuisance by sending your fake DAuth or DisAshock floods, right? No one will be able to do that. Uh, so yeah, that was about OWE. But because OWE does not use any shared secret or credentials, it is still vulnerable to MITM, which means if suppose you are at a hotel or at an airport, and suppose you are using you want to use this airport Wi-Fi, right? If I, as an attacker, right, I also create another fake network with the same SSID, you as attacker, right, you won't have any way to tell which one is real, right? You don't know, because there is no way to authenticate the network, right? There are ways to handle this, but it is not under your OWE or WPA3. So again, a food for thought for you. How you can solve this issue if you want to. How you can make sure that this guy, when he's connecting to the network, he can tell that this is the legitimate one and this is the fake one. And this guy has never connected to these in the past. That is the condition, right? So you can think about it. What can be the uh, issues? So what problems you had? You have obviously the secrecy and privacy problem when you are connecting with the open network. Secrecy, privacy, integrity, right? Everything will be taken care of by the tunnel that you are going to create, the encryption that you are going to have using the OWE. If you have to validate the client, you have the OTP and the social login and all of that. What you don't have currently is the AP validation. How you are going to validate the AP. So think about it. Exercise, an interesting exercise. So with that, we have concluded OWE. Guys, if you have any, okay, yeah, last thing is the packet analysis of OWE capture. So let's see a packet analysis. We will walk through the packets. So this is a packet capture. As you can observe, the SSID is OWE, right? I have taken this capture from Wireshark's captures. So, you can actually find it there. And I am also going to share this with you. So here, if you check the RSN information element of the beacon, you will actually find that instead of saying PSK or something, it is saying OWE, right? It is opportunistic wireless encryption in the AKM suites. right? Then you have other IEs which are not really very important here, right? Similarly, you can see other management packets. And this here is the authentication packets that are exchanged. First one is from station to access point, second one is from access point to station, and then comes the association request. So here you can observe in association requests, this is first time that we are seeing a RSNIE in here, right? So you can observe this also tells us that it is a opportunistic wireless encryption. And then you have your DHIE, right? The OWE DHIE, that is the Diffie-Hellman parameter. So you can observe here it is using 256-bit random ECP group 19. If you search for it, you will actually get the details on this one. You will actually find the RFC. And then this is the public key that is being shared by the station, right? And if you check the next one, that is the association response that is coming from the access point, you will actually see the similar information. You are going to see the RSNIE, and similarly, you are also going to get the DHIE. So again, same thing. You can see the group is 19, and then this is the public key. And after this, uh, obviously, they are going to perform the four-way handshake because they have calculated PMK by now, right? These two packets were instrumental in calculating the PMK. Once the PMK is calculated, after that, you can actually perform the four-way handshake, you can get the PTK, you can get the GTK, and then you are good to go, right? And then if you find the data packets that are belonging to this BSS ID, you'll actually see that this is one data packet, as you can observe. Uh, it will look total gibberish because it is encrypted, right? So these are the broadcast data packets that we were seeing. If you check the unicast one also, you will again find that this is not making any sense, which means it is the encrypted data packet, right? So this was the WPA3 OWE packet walkthrough. We also have a lab in which you can create OWE honeypot, and also you can connect to it. So let's take a look at that also. Again, the basics are same. Basics are not changing. You are again going to use hostapd, and you first need to create the configuration file, right? So here you have interface name, you have your SSID, the hardware mode, channel, WP key management, that is OWE in this case, right? We are not using PSK or something. RSN pairwise is kept to CCMP because we want CCMP for the encryption. And now you run hostapd along with this configuration file. There you go, access point is enabled, and it is now listening for the connections. So we can open another tab, and in this tab, if we check the status of our cards, we'll actually find that one of the card is being used as access point. And now we are defining this configuration file for the second card to connect to the first card, right? So this is your WPA supplicant configuration file. You have your SSID, you have your key management, and because there is no password or shared secret when it comes to OWE, so there is no other line, right? And then we can actually save this, and after that we can run WPA supplicant along with the interface WLAN1. And if we go here in the hostapd side, you will actually see that the client was connected, the handshake was completed, and it is connected to this network, right? So just like we were doing it for other schemes, you can also do the same for your OWE. And similarly for SAE also it is kind of same. You just have to change the configurations accordingly. So guys, any questions till here? We have covered OWE. After this, we are going to cover SAE, or simultaneous authentication of equals. Any questions? Okay. There is no question for now. Two people are typing, so I'm just waiting. Okay, okay. So one is nope. Maybe the other one has some question. Just waiting for the typing to. Okay, there's no question. Okay, can you break the password with the four-way handshakes? In this case, you won't be able to. And once we discuss SAE, it will become more clear to you why we cannot do that. So let's check the SAE first, and after that, if you still have this question, we'll come back and we will handle this. Also, in case of OWE, there is no password to break, right? So there's nothing that you can break. They are generating PMK, but they are using random numbers to generate it. So even because there is no point of doing it. Why? Let me explain it to you. It's a valid question actually. It's a very valid question that you are asking. So let's understand the scenario here. For OWE, for SAE, yes, it will make sense to break the password. So in OWE, you have this access point here, which is open in nature, right? So anyone can actually connect to it, right? So you have this guy here who is using his mobile phone or something to connect to this. Now, if you want to attack this guy or the network as an attacker, what objectives you will have? First objective can be to get the IP layer access to this machine or to the network, right? IP layer access you need, you are the attacker. Because this network is open, anyone can actually connect, right? So you can also connect. You don't need any password or anything for this. That is first. Second can be to view the password, to view the data that this guy is exchanging with the access point, right? So we cannot do that because if you remember, right, the power of DHE, the Diffie-Hellman exchange, is that it is just using random numbers on both sides, and then using these random numbers, it is actually generating a shared secret, right? And now this shared secret, because it is generated using the random numbers, and these are very big random numbers. I have already shown you some examples, right? So there is no way that we as an attacker can guess these random numbers. So we won't be able to break the SS or the shared secret. And so we won't be able to decrypt this part, right? So to connect to this guy, we don't have any issue. We can directly connect. And then we can also send IP traffic to this guy if it is not blocked by the access point. But to see what this guy is doing with this machine, it is not possible. So what we have to do in that case, if we want to see what this guy is going to exchange with this access point, we have to then create a fake access point. And then we have to, pray maybe that this guy connects to our access point, because anymore we cannot push it. We cannot push this user using our deauthentication packets anymore. There is PMF, right? So this is the scenario here. If you still have doubt, just let me know. I can explain it again. But I think this should just clear it for you. Okay. So now let's talk about SAE, or simultaneous authentication of equal. So in this case, this SAE is actually replacing WPA2 personal, right? So if in case of WPA personal, right, if you remember what we were doing. Okay, great. And it will become more clear, once we talk about SAE also. So in case of WPA2 personal, right, what we were doing, we already had a shared passphrase that we were sharing with the access point and all the authorized people in the network. And that passphrase was being used to generate the PMK. And then we used to perform a four-way handshake, and that handshake will actually give us PTK and GTK, and we are sorted, right? Very easy. In SAE's case, we have three stages. First stage is the SAE handshake, or it is also known as Dragonfly handshake. That's the original name of this handshake. Then comes the association request and response packets. And after that, you have the four-way handshake. So let us see how it actually works. But before doing that, let's understand what is the objective behind SAE, right? What we are trying to do. So once it is clear, we will know why our current choice is going to work well and why it is not susceptible to attacks of WPA2 PSK. So when we talk about WPA2 personal, right, everything is good, right? This scheme is still secure. There is no issue. Obviously, there are sometimes people found implementation bugs, but that is totally different, right? You have your design-based bugs, and then you have your implementation bugs. Implementation bugs and mistakes are always there, right? And it totally depends from company to company, engineer to engineer, how many bugs are going to be there, and how fast those are going to be resolved. So that is something that we cannot do anything about. But from design perspective, this is actually pretty good. Your WPA personal is pretty good. What is the problem with this? Problem is the offline dictionary attack. Now, you have to understand what is the difference between offline dictionary attack and online dictionary attack, right? So consider this scenario. You have a service that is running on this machine here, and then you have your attacker here. Now, suppose your attacker wants to know what is the password for this machine, right? Let's take an example of SSH, right? That service is running. Now, there is no way for the attacker to get some information which it can take away and then try to crack it. That's not possible. He has to connect to the service, try one password, it doesn't work, try another password, another password, another password. This thing, right, actively interacting with the system in order to perform dictionary attack is known as online dictionary attack, or you can also say live dictionary attack, right? Whereas if you have the option to take some information away and then break it later without the presence or interaction with this machine, then it will become a offline dictionary attack, right? Now, to put things in perspective, if you remember how we used to perform dictionary attacks on your WPA PSK, what we used to do, we used to capture the four-way handshake, right? You have the four-way handshake, you take the four-way handshake, and then you run dictionary attacks on it. You are not interacting with the access point. You don't need to be near the access point. So in that case, it is your offline dictionary attack. Now, offline dictionary attack gives you way more advantage than online dictionary attack from a attacker perspective. And how is that? Because when you have offline dictionary attack option, you can actually use multiple machines, you can use powerful machines, you can even use cloud infra to perform the cracking and all, right? And because you are not interacting with that machine that you are actually trying to attack, there is no way that this machine can reduce the number of efforts that you are trying, right? The number of attempts that you are doing. So for example, when you have SSH server, if as an attacker you try too much, it is going to block you. After each 3 attempts, there is a cooldown period, right? You can configure it. So you are going to take a lot of time. Whereas when it comes to the four-way handshake cracking, right? You have the handshake. It doesn't really matter how many machines of EC2 or some other cloud provider you are running it on, right? The more powerful the machine, the more attempts you can take, and you can do it in parallel also. So you can see the power, right? In this case, this guy is actually controlling you. You cannot send a lot of requests to it. It is using rate limiting. It is actually time outing you, right? So a lot of time uh, will be needed. Whereas in this case, you can actually speed it up. So if we have option to go for the offline dictionary attack, that is always good for an attacker, right? So we have, I think, some questions. Let me take a look. Okay. These are not related to this bootcamp, right? So now, how this is possible, right? Why it is possible, and what is the problem with it? Thing is, when we talk about WPA personal, right? If we just consider the PMK is 256-bit long, which actually makes the total key combinations 2 raised to power 256, which is a lot, right? Your AES 128-bit, uh, it actually gives you this space for the key, right? This is way bigger than this, right? This is not double, right? A lot of people make this mistake. It is not double. Double of 128 is 2 raised to power 129. It is way bigger, right? It is actually 1 raised to power 28 into 2 raised to power 128, right? Because then it will be plus and it will be done. Double of this space is this, right? So it's a very big space. You cannot actually perform a dictionary attack or a brute forcing attack or something like that on this size. It will run for eternity. However, the problem is you are using the passphrase to derive the PMK in case of your WPA2 personal. And what's the problem with the passphrase? First thing, it can be as short as 8 character. So you have a restriction that it needs to be 8 plus, but 8 is the lowest one that you can select when you are setting the password for WPA PSK, WPA2 PSK, you can say. So what you have just done is from 2 raised to power 256, you are bringing it down to 2 raised to power 48. If we are considering a 8 character alphanumeric password, right? For the sake of simplicity, we are doing it. Now we know that a lot of people, actually most of the people, they are going to use dictionary words, short and weak passwords, social and other easy passwords or pattern based password. So what happens is when you actually apply some intelligence to this space actually becomes very smaller. And that's the problem with WPA2 personal. Even when you have a key of this size, because of this thing here, right, it becomes problematic. And due to this problem, we also have the perfect forward secrecy that is not there due to this thing, right? You find out the passphrase 5 years later, you have the handshake, you have the traffic, you can decrypt it still, right? So that's the problem. So what we are trying to do in SAE, if we somehow uh, just ensure, just a minute, yeah, if we can somehow ensure this PMK combination, if it is 2 raised to power 128 and more, we are safe, because this is a very big space. You cannot run your dictionary attacks and brute forcing on this space, right? So that is what we are trying to do with SAE. We are trying to make sure that whatever PMK we are going to generate, we are not going to use a passphrase to derive it. So that's where the complexity is coming, right? On one hand, we want to make sure that it is not being derived from the password. On the same time, we have to make sure that we have some way uh, to perform the authentication so that the client knows that it is the right access point. The access point knows it is the right client. That is also needed. So what you can do here, you can use the DHE and the passphrase, and when you combine these by some logic, it will actually give you SAE. So what we will do in this case is when we are choosing the G generator, we will actually derive the G based on the passphrase. And how to do that? That's where the complicated math will come in. So this is the SAE overview, right? Uh, So instead of passing the simple authentication packets, in this case, we are going to exchange 4 authentication packets. Two of them are known as the commit packets. Next two are known as the confirm packets. So first the SAE authentication packet is sent by station, then the access point is sending it. It's packet of the same type with different content, obviously. Then SAE authentication packets are being exchanged. Once all of this is done, then you have association request, which will have RSN IE. Then you have association response. So what is happening here is, till here, we have actually derived PMK. Once you have the PMK, after that, you know what to do. To generate the temporary keys, go for the 4-way handshake, right? And that's what we are doing here. Once you have your PTK and GTK, everything is sorted. Now, how to convert a share secret to a point on curve? Which curve? The ECC, right? The elliptic curve. So for that, there is this some complicated math, right? Uh, so I'll just skip it because most of people don't like it, right? You can go through it. If it is not clear to you, just let me know. So here, what we are doing, we are actually doing some derivation. Uh, by using this derivation, we are actually finding a point that is called X and Y. This X and Y, right? Let me explain it very quickly for those who are intrigued about it. Your elliptic curve is like, eclipse, right? Ellipse, sorry, not eclipse. Uh, Something like this, right? You can see, again, not a perfect one. It needs to be symmetric, but yeah, you get the idea, right? What I'm trying to do here. So this is your something like this. Again, not symmetric, but please just consider it to be symmetric. So now what we are trying to do here, we are taking the access point MAC, the station MAC, the passphrase, because we do have a passphrase here in WPA3. We need it, right? Then you have I. What is I? I is an integer value. You take any integer value I here. If the access point MAC is bigger than station MAC, then this is the order that you are going to follow. If it is not that, then this is the order that you are going to follow. The contents are same, but you are exchanging the positions of MACs. And because we are performing concatenation here, the order actually matters. And then you are performing a hash of this value here, which will giving you hashed passwords. You take the hash password and its length, and then you are again putting in some function, which is key derivation function here, which will give you x. You will perform f of x, and you will then calculate square root of it, and this will give you p, that is xy. Now what you will do, you will actually plot this in x and y. If it is not on the curve, you are going to go back, you are going to increment I, and then you are again going to go through it. So you are going to follow this till the time you have a valid point on the curve. This is how you are doing it. But this is just the first step, right? After that, we actually choose private and mask. These are random values that you are using, and you use these to calculate scale. Scale is equals to this operation. You are, because you have the private and mask, right? And it is being done on the both parties, on the access point, on the station. So once you have the scale, you also calculate point. Point, again, you have to do this. P is the point, right? Remember, P is the point xy. So once you have the scalar and the point, you can then move to the next step by using the scalar and the point, right? And the private, because you have also calculated private here, private and mask. You have all of these. So by using those, you can calculate a new point, that is the shared secret, right? This is very important. This is the shared secret. So you can calculate the P for the access point, calculate the key K for access point like this. Similarly, for station, the K can be calculated by this. And if you simplify this, it will actually become this, and it will actually become this. The only thing that is changing is the order here, right? As you can observe. Now the thing about this is here ordering matters. So it will be different. So now you have the capital K. You will use a function f to map this capital K to a numerical value, that is smaller k. Then you can calculate the token of access point by using this function, and token of station by using this function. And here, please remember that token of AP is not equal to token of STA. Why? Because of the ordering, right? You can see the ordering. Ordering matters. Whenever you are concatenating, ordering matters. So this is how you are going to derive all of these things. Once all of this is done, you can then go ahead. You can take your smaller k, you can take scalar of AP, scalar of station, and mod R. R is also defined. And you can calculate your PMK. Right? So it is not as simple as we were doing in the WPA PSK. It is a little bit more complicated than that. But the point is, once you have all of these values calculated, you can then perform the SAE handshake. This is the SAE handshake that we are doing. These are the first 4 authentication packets that we are exchanging. Once you exchange all of these informations that we just discussed, right, uh, you can calculate the common secret on both sides, and then you can use this common secret to derive the PMK, as we have already seen in the formula. And once you have the PMK, right, after that, we know the drill. We can go for the 4-way handshake, and once the 4-way handshake is there, we have our PTK and GTK. So let's take a look at the packet analysis. So here you can observe this is the beacon frame. The SSID is Wireshark SAE. And you can observe that the SSID parameter is there. Then you can check the RSN information element. RSN information element is clearly showing us that it is using SAE, right, with the CCM. And if we scroll down a little, we'll actually find the authentication frames being exchanged. So you can observe simultaneous authentication of equal. It's not open, it's 0 when it is open. In this case, it is a new subtype of authentication frame. You have the sequence, that is 1, you have the status message, and this is SAE message type commit, right? I already mentioned there are 2 type of messages that we are going to exchange. First is commit, second one is confirm. Group ID is 19. It's a 256-bit random ECP group that we are using here to perform the ECDH, right? And then if you remember, we have the scalar, we have the finite field element. Similarly, in the second one that is sent from the access point side, we will have the similar things in that one also. There you go. The only difference is this one is coming from the other side, from the access point. Then comes the third packet, right? Third packet here is the confirm packet, and in this you are actually sending the confirm. And similarly, you have the fourth packet. So now by going through these packets, right, after exchanging these packets, you have enough material to actually calculate PMK. And then you have the association packets, and then you have the 4-way handshake. And once the 4-way handshake is done, after that, your data packets that are there will be encrypted, right? You won't be able to look inside them. And that is what is expected, right? So we are trying to find data packets here. There you go. If you just check the hash dump of these, that actually makes it clear that it's encrypted, because it will look like gibberish. If it is plain text, you will actually find some words and everything in those, especially in the bigger data packets. So this is the WPA3 SAE. We also have a lab on it. Please feel free to try this out. If you want to see Dragonfly Handshake in action, right? You can use this GitHub repository. You just have to, clone it, just run it with Python 3, and it will show you something like this. So every time when you will run, it is going to take these numbers from random, but it will give you an idea what all is being generated and what all is being exchanged, right? So we have already gone through all of this flow, but if you want to see it with real numbers, you can do that. So for example, here, if I just have to show you very quickly so that you guys can actually relate to this. Here, you can observe that, just a minute. Yeah. So you have X, this is the valid point, right? And this is the Y, right? This is the number that your station has found. Similarly, if you take a look at the access point here, right? And for this case also, it is using the same number, right? And here you can see that the point is on curve. This situation is met. It's the fifth number that they have used. Uh, Point is on curve, so that part is done. Now you have scalar and element that you have to send. So this is the scalar, this is the element, and along with that you are also sending this y, right? You are also showing this y. Y is different, all of these values are different for the access point. Once the information is exchanged, we can actually derive the shared secret on both sides. And once the shared secrets are defined, after that, just to make sure that each other party also has the right information, we actually use tokens. So you compute the token, you receive the token, and then you check if it is right. If it is right, then it is good. And then you have your PMK calculated. So this is the PMK in this case. You can see PMK is same. It needs to be same. The shared secret is also the same, right? So if you want to try this out, you can do it by cloning this specific repository. Now, the $1,000,000 question here is why offline brute forcing or dictionary attack will not work on your SAE, right? That is the main thing. That is why we are actually moving from WPA to PSK to WPA3 SAE, because we want to make sure that even when someone is using a relatively weak password, he should not be able to, he should not fall for the dictionary attack, right? The WPA PSK attack should not work on him. That's the objective here. So now to generate the PMK, right, we need private of AP, we need private of station, we need P raised to power XY. Similarly, for the token computation, we also need this part. Now the problem is we cannot calculate private and mask because it was generated from random, right? So we cannot actually calculate P, right? We cannot do that. So we won't be able to generate all of this. And that's the problem why we cannot perform a offline brute forcing or offline dictionary attack. With the SAE, again, we have the PMF, we have the PMK caching. We also have an anti-clogging token feature, right, which is supposed to prevent the computation DOS. So we'll talk about it later. However, this scheme is still vulnerable to online dictionary attack, right? So for example, you cannot perform the offline dictionary attack, but just like SSH, right, as we were mentioning before, if you have your access point here, okay, yeah, if you have, okay, the color is white, yeah. If you have your access point here, right, it is hosting some kind of WPA3 SAE network, right? In that case, as an attacker, you can actually use a live dictionary attack. So for example, you have a card, You will try to connect to this guy, right? You will try the first password, it will say it is not right. You will select the other one similarly, right? So this attack is still possible. You cannot perform it in isolation. You cannot capture the handshake and then try to do this. It will not work. But this way, it can work if the password that is defined by the user is very weak. And in this case also, because the attraction is active, you can actually provide the limiters to actually take care of this. You can have MAC-based control. MAC-based control means you're checking the MAC address from which the request is coming, and then accordingly, you're not actually entertaining it if there are 3 requests already in a time threshold. Similarly, a token-based control can also be there. Right? And it provides you forward secrecy because your random components are used to calculate PMK. No one can, actually calculate the same PMK in the future. So forward secrecy is there. What are the attacks on WPA3 that are proposed? So before we go into that, guys, SAE is clear to you? Is there any question that you want to ask in the WPA3 SAE? Because then we are going into the attack part now. What are the proposed attacks? As I was mentioning before, most of these attacks, if not all, are not going to work because these are patched and some of these can be prevented by using the recommended settings. Okay, great. So we are going to discuss about 4 of the attacks that are proposed. First one is the downgrade and dictionary attack against WPA3 transition. Are there any Wi-Fi cards that supports WPA3? Do any of the alpha cards support it? WPA clear. Okay. See, WPA3 support from so it's not the support that is needed in the hardware side. It is a support that you require in the software side, right? So it depends if your software has the support or not. If we are talking about Linux and the Windows, right? Your Windows machines, your phones, they all have capability to use WPA3. For our purpose, for our attacker scenario, our WPA supplicant as well as our host APD, they both support WPA3. So yes, you can use any card that you like, whatever works on normal, Wi-Fi networks, it will work because this thing is a change that is required in the software side, not on the hardware side. So it can be rolled out pretty quickly. By now, I'm very sure that most of the devices that, if not all, of the consumer grade devices, even they actually support WPA3. So you can actually create a network, you can connect to it by using your phone, and if you're using WPA supplicant on the Linux machine, it is already there. If you want to create a honeypot, your host APD already has the support, right? So yes, support is there. Any card can will work, not dependent on card. So the first attack is downgrade attack on WPA3 transition mode. Now, what is WPA3 transition mode? WPA transition mode is a special scenario where you have a network, right? You have a network, you have some users, and you want to use WPA3 SAE here, right? But the problem is, again, this is something which used to happen before. Now, I'm very sure that most of the devices, until unless they are not very old and manufacturer has stopped updating them, devices are going to have support for WPA3. But suppose there is this scenario where you have people who have devices which don't have the support for WPA3. So in that case, you still want them to be able to use this. So what people came up with is the WPA3 transition network. So WPA transition network will have WPA3 SAE and WPA2 PSK, both. So if your device supports WPA3, it is going to use WPA3. If it is supporting only WPA2, it can then use that to connect to this network. Now, what's the problem? Problem is, for this network, the passphrase is obviously 1, right? which will be applicable for WPA3, which will be applicable for WPA2. Now, again, if someone is able to capture the four-way handshake of this device connecting to this access point using WPA2 PSK, right? We already know that WPA PSK is vulnerable to offline dictionary attack, right? So what will happen if the password is not good enough? Then four-way handshake will actually recover the passphrase, and because the passphrase is same, uh, the objective of introducing WPA3 SAE is now defeated. So that's the attack on WPA3 transition. As you can see the steps here, how to attack. Capture WPA2 PSK handshake of a connecting client, right? Then you can then capture the handshake and then you can break it. Now thing is, suppose there is no you know there is no such device that actually doesn't have support for WPA3, and all the devices are actually connecting using WPA3, right? No one is using WPA2 PSK. So in this case, you obviously won't be able to capture this handshake. So what you can do in that case, as an attacker, you can host a SSID or a honeypot, which will have the same properties here. SSID name is going to be the same. Channel is also going to be same. Doesn't really matter, but let's keep it same. And then only define WPA2 PSK. So what a lot of clients will do in this case, or what they used to do, I'm not sure if the implementation is changed now. When they will see this network, they will see that, okay, I know this SSID, and I know that it was used for the transition network, but in this case, because it's a WPA2 PSK, it will again go ahead and connect to it. Because there is no option to connect using WPA3, right? It is an attacker controlled network. So by leveraging this fact, when this guy will connect, we can capture the four-way handshake, and then we can crack the handshake. Once the handshake is cracked, we already know how to connect to this network. So that was the downgrade attack. Right? How to perform it? First, identify the WPA3 transition network. How to do that? If you check the beacon, the RSN information element of the beacon, you will actually find that in AKM, or the auth key management field, instead of just having SAE or PSK, this transition network is going to have both. So as you can observe in the screenshot, the highlighted part, right, this one here, you have PSK and then you have SAE, which means it's a transition network. In that case, create a WPA2 PSK network with same SSID name or same SSID. You can use any password that you want, because anyway it doesn't really matter. You just want to capture the half four-way handshake, and once that is provided, and again, because PMF is enabled, you cannot actually perform deauthentication. So you have to actually wait for it to connect to you, right? Or you have to select such a place where the real access point is not there. So it will directly connect to yours, and then you will capture the half four-way handshake, and then you can run the dictionary attack on it, right? That was the first attack. Second attack is the downgrade attack on WPA3 transition. Okay, yeah, sorry. It is the same attack, the downgrade attack, because we are downgrading it from WPA3 SAE to WPA2 PSK in one way, and then we are getting the passphrase and then we are using it. How to protect against it? The vendors can make sure that the device is not going to connect to WPA2 SSID with the saved password if this password is for WPA3 transition network, right? So that can be one thing that vendors can implement. For the users or the admins who are deploying it, it will make more sense to disable the WPA3 transition mode and instead create two separate networks, one for the WPA2 PSK and another one for the WPA3 SAE with separate passphrases. So what will happen if somehow the attacker gets his hands on the passphrase that is being used for the WPA2 PSK, right, by using the dictionary attack method on four-way handshake, WPA3 SAE network will still remain secure, right? So that is the remedy for it. Online dictionary attack on WPA3 SAE will still work, as we already mentioned, right? So again, you can try to perform the online dictionary attack on WPA PSK as well in this lab. It will be a good thing to try out. So try this out. Then the second attack, or the second proposed attack, is the security group downgrade attack. In this one, we are trying to make the client device select a weak security group deliberately, right? How this will work? So you have your station, you have your access point, which is a honeypot. It is controlled by the attacker. So now this guy is trying to connect to this honeypot. So as you know, when the first auth SAE commit message is sent, in that the group ID is also mentioned. So suppose this station was, proposing the group 21, and in these group numbers, generally the bigger the number, the more secure the group is, right, in terms of its key size and all. So it is proposing 21 here. So in this case, because honeypot is controlled by the attacker, it can actually tell that, okay, I don't actually support this status, this specific group, right? So which means it is sending status unsupported. So what will happen? This guy will then fall back to a relatively weaker group. That's what it is doing here. So 21 was not supported by the honeypot. So now it is using 19. So in this case, honeypot can then accept, and then the whole thing can be done. So now here, what we were able to do, we were able to, decrease this group from 21 to 19. Again, will this work in real world? It's very less likely, because even after going for a relatively smaller P, Q, and G, the computation is still a lot expensive, right? So a nation state actor might be able to pull it off, but the normal attackers like us, they won't be able to do this. Then comes the third kind of attacks, that is the side channel attack, right? What is the side channel attack? Side channel attack is when you leverage the leakage of information from the implementation, right? So you're not directly, getting any information, but you're getting information from the information leakage from the implementation. Examples, I have given some examples here. So in some cases, security researchers were able to, steal the data by using the fan speed, or by using the frequencies, or by using the time taken and all. Even the voltage fluctuation and temperature, have been used for the side channel attacks. So let's see what is a timing based side channel attack, right? So in this case, you have, this is the pseudocode. What this pseudocode is doing, it is asking you to enter a password P, right? Suppose you provided this password, and then you also have the stored password, that is this, right? It is ABCD. So it is going to match the password provided by the user. This is the provided password, and this is the saved password. So it is going to match these, and if it is same, then it is going to print success. Otherwise, it is not going to print anything. So that's the code that we have here. Now think of this scenario. You have ADCC. This is ABCC, right? So what will happen? It is matching digit by digit or character by character, right? So here you can see it will start from 0. The first one actually matches. So what will happen here? is it will go here, it will sleep for 1 second, and then it will go on the second one. Second does not meet, right? It is not equal. A is equal to A, D is not equal to B. So it will happen, it is going to exit, but it is going to exit after 1 second, right? Now think of it like this. Uh, the user provide A, B, C, C, right? So what will happen now? Instead of just matching the first part, now the first 3 characters are the same. So what is going to happen? This code here, right? When you run it and you provide this input to it, it is going to exit after 3 seconds, right? So you can see the issue here, right? Providing, depending on the password that we are providing here, the exiting time of this program is getting changed. So what I can do, I can actually tell from this observation here how much characters we are able to match, right? And by using this strategy, we can actually try to recover this password as itself, right? That is the timing based side channel attack. It's the simplest timing based side channel attack. So that's the thing about it. If your implementation is done in such a way that one operation, depending on users input, right, if it takes more or less time, then a timing based attack can be conducted. Now the thing is, when we were converting the passphrase into the modp elements, right, there is this function which is going to take more time for some passwords than others, because it is being dependent on the passphrase, right? This function that you are seeing here, this is depending on the input, it is actually taking variable time. So what we can actually do is we can perform a timing based side channel attack on it, and we can try to recover the password from it, right? Again, all of this is issue related to this implementation here. So timing based attack, in case of your brain pool also. So this is for the DH groups, right? The mod P, the classical way of doing things. If we talk about ECC, in ECC you have 2 options for the curves. You have NIST curves and then you have brain pool curves. So in brain pool curve also, there was this portion which was actually also affected with the time-based side channel attack, right? So the defense against it is not to use elliptic curves that are given by brain pool, right? Only use the NIST one, which are not going to do this. So timing based side channel attack won't work if you are using NIST curves. If you're using brain pool or DH, then it is going to be there. Then another attack that was proposed was the denial of service attack. So as you can observe, right, whenever we were calculating these things, whenever we are calculating PMK, we are performing a lot of computation intensive tasks. So for example, when you raise a big number to the power of another big number, it is a computation intensive effort, right? This task is very computation intensive. Now suppose there are like 10 clients that actually connects to the access point at the same time, right? And all of those are using WPA3. So because these are 40 different machines, they can actually handle it, but your access point is the same, right? It is 1. So what can happen is your access point might exhaust its resources and it might get into a hang state for some time. And due to that, multiple legitimate clients can actually face issues. So denial of services, that. And there were then other implementation based attacks, like there was no validation of curves, the bad randomness was there, right? So all of those were also there, but as these are implementation based attacks, these are not going to be always there in each manufacturer's devices. That's one. And second, because all of this is now in public domain for last 2-3 years, I'm very sure that it is already fixed. Such problems are already fixed. Not all, but at least the one that were pointed out. In WPA3 enterprise, there is no major change. The only thing that they have done in WPA3 enterprise is they have ensured that you have to follow at least 192-bit security, which means if you are using any algo for the encryption, it needs to be more than 192. If you are using any kind of HMAC hash algo, it needs to be more than 192-bit. That is the change in WPA3 enterprise. Then comes the device provisional protocol, or DPP. DPP is how you connect your smart devices to your Wi-Fi network, right? Just like you used to do in the WPS, similar to that. Uh, in this process, there are three phases. The first one is authentication, then there is configuration, and then there is network access. And the industry-friendly name for this one is Easy Connect. So if you see a device that says Easy Connect certified, it means it has DPP. So this is the scenario here. You have a device on the left hand side, and on the right hand side you have a mobile phone. So device is labeled as device here, whereas this phone is labeled as configurator. So phone has the application in it that is corresponding to this specific device. The issue that mainly comes when you are trying to onboard such a device, so you can think of a thermostat, right? These things, they don't have a fully functional keyboard. So you cannot actually punch in the whole password that is there, which can be alphanumeric and all, right? So what is done to onboard these is you actually generate a fixed ECDH pair for these, and you take the public key and you take the public key and all the other information like the MAC address, the config address, the serial number and all, and you put it in a QR code, and you stick that QR code to this specific device. Now your configurator, because it's a phone, it can install applications. It can install the application, it can scan the QR code, and then from there it can recover all of this information, right? So now it has the public key of device, the MAC address, the config channel, the serial number. So by taking all of this information, it can then derive K1, and then K1 can be sent along with the public key of configurator and the nonce to the device. After getting this message, the device can also generate K1, and it can then also share some information with the configurator. Once the information is validated on both sides, the authentication is confirmed, and after that, uh, device can ask the configurator for it to provide the configuration, and then the configurator will provide the configuration to device, which in secure networks case is going to be the passphrase, right? And once that is provided, the device will use that specific passphrase to connect to the Wi-Fi network. Guys, any questions till here? If you have any questions till here, please let me know in the live instructor interaction channel. If you need some time, right, that's totally fine. I know it is a lot of content that we are covering today. So you can take your sweet time. You have access to the Discord as well as to the labs for the next 7 days. And if anything comes to mind, you can just ask me at that time then. So after this, we are now going to take a look at the frag attacks. Again, we are not going to talk about all the implementations and all the things, because as I already mentioned, right, uh, the setups and the requirements are quite steep in most cases. And another thing is, because these were again those attacks that can be fixed by the industry, these are already explained to the vendors. So vendors have actually covered all of these. After that, they have released the research out. Okay, so we have a question. I'm using deauthentication attack to put attacker down in WPA2. Can I use DOS for the same way in the WPA3? I mean, only with one card. DOS with one card, if you are using Mac, if you are using a laptop, which obviously you are, yes, you can try, but it is highly subjective question. It totally depend what kind of hardware is there on the other side. If it is, a travel router, or if it is something that you have created on hosted PD, yes, you can actually exhaust it. But if it is a proper access point which actually supports 100, 200 users, uh, that's very difficult to do. You will need multiple cards to do that, which are running some logic, which are checking the max and all, right? Changing our max and trying again and again. So yes, it is possible, but it is subjective to say. So with that, guys, let's move to the last part, that is frag attacks. So frag attacks, there is this paper by Matthew Van Hoff that is called Fragment and Forge, Breaking Wi-Fi Through Frame Aggregation and Fragmentation. There are 3 design flaws, and then there are multiple implementation flaws that they have documented. This is the official site. And the thing that we are trying to do today, right? Again, all of these attacks are, pretty advanced attacks. These are pretty complex. But what we are going to do today is we are going to take a look at the basics so that you know why these attacks are, happening. We are going to take a look at 2 of the main popular attacks. And then we are also going to take a look at how we can check if our network is vulnerable to these attacks. If you are using a corporate, if you are using enterprise grade access point, I don't think there is anything to worry about, because those guys have already pushed the updates to thwart these. But if you're using a home access point, it might be worth checking. So first of all, let's understand what is fragmentation and what is aggregation, right? Frame aggregation is a way by which you can collect multiple small frames and you can send them in one aggregated frame. Why? Because if you're sending a lot of smaller frames, the overhead is more, right? You are spending more network time on sending the headers and footers and X than the real content, right? So what you can do, you can actually aggregate these. So this is supported by Wi-Fi protocol, right? So you can do this. Similarly, in frame fragmentation, it is totally opposite. So when you are transmitting large frames, the chances for those to get corrupted is more. And the problem is, if this get corrupted, you have to then retransmit the whole frame. So what can be done in such scenario is you can fragment this packet into smaller parts, and then you can transmit this. On the other end, on the receiver end, when these packets will come, these will be again combined to form the original data or original content, right? So that is the frame fragmentation. Now let's talk about the main design flaw, that is CVE 2020-24588. Right, and for that, let me use my pen to draw. Okay. As you can read, the CVE says, accepting non-SPP AMSDO frame, right? Pretty complex if you're not aware of all of these terms. So let us first see what is MSDU. MSDU, or MAC Service Data Unit, is a Wi-Fi frame, right? Then what is AMSDU? A stands for aggregate. It means when you are combining multiple MSDUs to be sent together in a single MPDU, then it is called AMSDU. Okay. So instead of sending one Wi-Fi frame, you are actually aggregating these into one, and then you are sending. That is what this means. Now, what is a SPP AMSDU? SPP stands for Signaling and Payload Protected, right? And AMSDU I have already explained to you. SSP AMSDU is the one which is CCMP protected, right? It is CCMP protected AMSDU. And in its case, when you are using this, the thing is, just a minute. The thing is, when you are using this, right, this is your non-SPP AMSDU. So thing is, suppose this is your WLAN frame, right? In this header, you have this field called is aggregated, right? So in AMSDU, you have two type of packets. One is SPP frames actually. Another one is non-SPP, right? We have already gone through SPP thing, what it is. Now, thing is, this is your frame. In the header, you have is aggregated. If it is not protected, right, it means if someone will change it, we will not know, right? That is what not protected means. So in this case, if this field is not protected, then it is your non-SPP. If it is protected, then it is SPP. What is the vulnerability? What is the flaw? Flaw is your devices, they are actually receiving non-SSP AMSDO frames even when they should not. That's the flaw, right? And due to this thing, what we can actually do is we can inject arbitrary frames that can cause other issues. What can be done there? So let's take the original slides. Let's take a look at the original slides by Matthew for this specific aggregation attack. So this is the scenario here, as you can observe, right? Okay, if I try to draw, then I cannot scroll. So let's do it like this only. So this is the scenario here for the aggregation attack. And as you can see, it is pretty complex. You have a website that you own and you have hosted it. This is your Wi-Fi access point. This is the attacker that is there present in the same environment. And then you have this device. So this is the device that we are targeting. So what we will need to do first is we have to make this attacker visit this specific site. When the victim will try to connect, when this guy, right, when he is trying to connect to this site, at that time, obviously a TCP connection will be open. And what this guy, what our controlled, hacker controlled server will do, hacker controlled web server will do, it is send a special IPv4 packet to this guy. This special IPv4 packet contains this call, right? And it will become more clear to you what it is. Now, when this comes to the access point, it is coming from the wired network, so it is not encrypted till now. Now, it is the job of your access point to provide encryption, right? Because you are sending it over the air now. So it will be encrypted as normal frame, and it will, when you transmit it from here, attacker will actually intercept this, and attacker will set the AMSDU flag. So in general, in normal scenario, when you wanted to forward this frame, you didn't needed to set this flag, right? Because there is no aggregation needed. Whereas, because attacker can actually do this, and no one is actually checking for this. This is your non-SSS. This is your non-SPP AMSDU, right? So it has set the flag. It has flipped the flag. By flipping the flag, now it looks like to the receiver that it is a AMSDU, right? And it is going to treat it, the receiver is going to treat it like that. And what it will do, it will then try to parse the special packet that we have sent. And because that special packet contains a specific parameter, right, we will be able to inject an arbitrary frame that is sent by this server, right? In part of this, it will be sent. And what we can actually do, we can inject this packet in such a way that it looks like a DSCP or a ICMP RA packet, right? And by using that, then we can mount other attacks. So for example, if we somehow, by using this method, if we change the DNS server, then whatever the attacker, whatever the victim wants to look at it, whatever site he wants to open, he is going through our DNS server, and then we can control a lot of aspects of it. Similarly, another design flaw was to reassemble the fragments encrypted under the different keys. So that was another issue. I think we have a question. How to force the user AP not to use non-SPP? You cannot do this. You cannot do anything about it. It is something that the 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 manufacturer, the vendor has to take care of, right? We cannot do anything about it. It is way below than what user can control. It is already, it needs to be there from the vendor side. These devices, they do not expose so many finer settings to the users, because it will become very confusing then. So you cannot do it. Your vendor has to do it, and I think most of them must have done this by now. So the next design flaw was reassembling fragments encrypted under different keys, right? So usually this should not happen, but it was allowed. So due to this, the adversary could have exfiltrated data in the selected frames. Similarly, another design flaw was not to clearing the fragments from memory when reconnecting to a network. So you can see this example here. This is the attacker. This is your Wi-Fi access point. So suppose we have sent a fragment to it, and after this, we disconnect and we let the victim connect. Victim is sending some other fragment. So this fragment and this fragment that this guy is sending, right? The attacker is sending. These will be reassembled. And due to this, the attacker can again exfiltrate the data, right? So that was one more problem. So what could have done here to prevent this? Once this guy leaves, right? Once this attacker leaves, we should have flushed this thing. Similarly, there were a lot of implementation flaws for frame injection, right? So all of these are actually fixed now. You can actually see the real talk, the presentation that is given by Matthew. So he has explained all of these in detail, not all of the implementation ones, because some of them are very trivial, but the main one he has explained. But the point is, you are not going to find these out there anymore, because these are fixed. So not really of our use as an attacker. Similarly, some more implementation-based attacks. So non-consecutive packet numbers of fragments, were not checked. They were clubbed together. Some of these implementation flaws were present in some of the vendors, right? Not all of the vendors. So it's not like everyone was vulnerable. Some of them had implemented it like that. So those were the problematic part. Similarly, in uh, one of these attacks, or one of these implementation flaws, it was possible for the attacker to forward the EAPOL type looking frames to other clients without even associating properly with the network, right? So that should not be possible. So by using it in the combination of the main design flaw that we have learned, it can be used to exploit the client, right? Again, as I mentioned earlier, these are pretty complicated if we have to deep dive into these. So if you are interested, I have provided you the overview, the main reason why this is happening, right? And also what is being done here. But if you are interested in taking a deep dive, you can actually check the main site that is mentioned on the slides. Uh, they have provided some more explanation there, so you can go through it if you are interested. And if you face any difficulty anywhere, you can just let me know, and I'll try to explain it to you on this card, using some other easy examples. So this is a summary of all the attacks that they have found. It's a quick summary where you can see the impact, the target, and other preconditions, what is needed, what is not needed, right? And additional notes. So the real paper is hosted here, so you can also go through it. Now, how to check if your device is vulnerable, right? So they have released a tool that is available on their GitHub repo. So you can actually check it by using any of this hardware. If it is with you can use it to check. And once it is clear to you, by using this tool, it will become clear to you if the device is vulnerable. So you can then try to fix this. So guys, with that, we have covered all the syllabus that we have planned for this bootcamp. Uh, you are going to have access to this Discord server as well as to the labs, the complimentary access for 1 more week. After that, if you have to ask any question, so what we do is after this 5 week period, that is 4 week of the bootcamp and one additional week, we disable posting on the Discord server. So it is going to be there. You are going to be a member of it, but nobody will be able to post on it. So in that case, if you think that you want to ask some question from me, if you want to ask something, you have my email address. So you have gotten the introduction mail from my side, right? You are going to get another mail from my side for exam also. So you can just revert on that and you can ask questions, whatever you want to. For the lab access, after this 1 week, you won't be able to access labs if you just have the complimentary access. If you want to access the labs after that, then you have to go for Pentester Academy monthly or yearly subscription. So that is something that you have to do. Now, we will also issue you a completion certificate for this course, and you will get it, I think, by tomorrow. You should be able to get it by Monday, not tomorrow. Uh, and also by Monday, you will also get a mail from our side, and that mail will contain all the instructions for attempting PAWSP, that is Pentester Academy Wi-Fi Security Professional. The mail will contain a link for the certification portal, which is similar to Attack Defense, but it is different portal. So you can go to that portal. We will also mention a token, exam token. It's a one-time use exam token, which is valid for 60 days from the day of receipt of the mail. So when you will receive the mail after that, for 60 days, you can use it anytime. So you just need to go to the certification portal. You have to provide the token. And after that, a 48-hour clock will start. So within this 48-hour, you will get access to 5 lab setups. Just like you have labs in Attack Defense, you will have 5 Wi-Fi lab scenarios. You have to solve any 4 out of these 5 in the 48 hours. You have to submit the flags. Flag submission is always already there on the certification portal, so you don't have to send us mails or something. As soon as you submit all of these, you will be granted the PAWSP certificate. So what I will suggest is, if you are going to try the PAWSP certificate, please do all the labs that we have discussed in the class that we have given in homework. That is one. After that, please try your hands on to the badges. So we do have verifiable badges on Wi-Fi and the verifiable badges section of Attack Defense. There are like 3 badges: basic, intermediate, and advanced. Please try those. And after that, go for the PAWSP. That way you will have an idea what to expect, and how to actually troubleshoot and do things in the lab when you are not provided with hints and all. We don't provide any hints. We will only help you if you think that the lab is broken, which is very rare. It's a static setup that actually is brought up whenever you are running the lab. So most of the time, lab is actually correct. So guys, with that, I have covered everything that I had planned. If you have any questions regarding the PAWSP or regarding the content or anything, you can ask them that right now. You are most welcome. I hope that you guys have learned a lot from this boot camp. And if you come across something which you think is needed, in your job or something, and I can help, just let me know. I'll try to help you. Have you done the OS WP? No, I haven't. I have been working in Wi-Fi security for past 6 to 7 years now. I have been teaching it. I have developed things in Wi-Fi, right? From your enterprise products to your hacking gadgets and all of that. So yeah, I'm not sure how updated it is. I never checked. So yeah. So guys, any questions that you might have? Okay, my only questions are about if you have a command sheet. Yes, 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 we do. I have created one. I will share it with you, by Monday. I just want to finalize it. We have created one for you. I remember. Yeah, yeah. Don't worry, Mike. You will actually get that. I just need to go through it once and see if something is missing. I'll add that and I'll share it with you. Great, great. So, any other questions? I don't think we have any. Anytime, guys, we anyway have 7 more days of lab access as well as of Discord access. And after that, you have my email address. If anything comes up, if you want to ask anything, please feel free to ask it. And yeah, again, thanks for joining Pentester Academy's Wi-Fi Security Bootcamp. I hope it was worth your time and effort that you have put in. And yeah, I'll see you sometime in the conference or somewhere in person. Thank you. Bye bye, guys. Take care.